stars in society and social structure in Hollywood, and right here you're looking at the top tier of directors for the last 60 years. We have Martin Scorsese, George Lucas, Francis Ford Coppola, and Steven Spielberg. And the fact of the matter is, this is a brotherhood. And these two, Lucas and Spielberg, have been best friends for 60 years, almost. They knew each other in college. They basically took points on each other's films. They followed Francis Ford Coppola around the Warner Brothers lot like little ducklings. And when Coppola went north to San Francisco, Lucas followed him. Now Spielberg stayed behind in Southern California and is still connected to the establishment industry, but his friendship with George, because of the great movies they made together and because it's a friendship, they're brothers, is solid. And here they are with the great John Milius, who directed and wrote The Wind and the Lion, Red Dawn, and who is, in my opinion, one of the greatest storytellers that ever lived. And here's George and Steven again. Why am I telling you this? Because it appears that the flying monkeys at Lucasfilm, once Kennedy and her husband got snubbed by Spielberg in public at the Indiana Jones 5 premiere in Los Angeles, they know it's over now. Spielberg, that's like having Charlemagne, the emperor of the Roman Empire, or you name the Roman emperor, Augustus, basically say, we're done with you. Go back to your villa. Stop bothering us. That's basically what that was. That was a banishing for both Marshall and Kennedy. And she was left confused on the red carpet. She was left dazed. She didn't really know what to do. I compared it to Henry VIII's wife, Catherine Howard, once her head got lopped off, and as the oxygen left her brain, she observed her body laying next to her and didn't understand what was going on. That's just what it was. Kennedy and Marshall with George. I think these two, as a team, built up a lot of resentment towards George Lucas. I honestly think that they both are not as creative as they'd like to be. Marshall is a great producer of Broadway plays. Maybe that's what he should do. But when his wife went on her own, out from under the guidance of, Spielberg and Lucas, Clint Eastwood, Robert Zemeckis, Martin Scorsese, she failed. She fell on her face. And, look, I'll give you an example. When TLJ was written and the first draft handed in, and Carrie Hart, who got unceremoniously thrown under the bus because she was a black girl, handed it to Kennedy, perfectly, I know, you and I all know perfectly well, Kennedy gave the script to Frank. Frank read it, loved it, and because that's what you do, okay? That's what you do. And it's the karmic blowback has blown up in their faces. And, this quote by Gina Carano works for George and Stephen and Harrison Ford. But I'll rephrase it. Don't try to ruin our legacy with your bullshit, with your failures, when your life could be ruined with the truth. And The Truth, TFA, was a terrible movie. think people can admit to that now. Rogue One was mediocre. TLJ was horrible. Solo was horrible. Plagued with nepotism everywhere. Part of that is Steven Spielberg's fault. I'll call him out on that. And The Rise of Skywalker was a dumpster fire. They were every one of these movies, except for one, was over budget. There were massive reshoots. And look, that's all on Kennedy's head. And I can't imagine how George Lucas feels, knowing these people who purported to be his friends, treated what he built. He blamed Disney. But when you look at it, Kennedy was the one that walked in to Iger's office and said, we have more movies ahead of us than behind us. Why don't we turn Galaxy's Edge into a sequel trilogy based attraction rather than original trilogy? First mistake, Galaxy's Edge, all sequel trilogy bullshit. Second mistake, okay. And those are just two more examples of her failures. Okay, so these two were together in this. Okay, and when Spielberg dropped the nuke of not mentioning either of them, basically the cone of silence around the Brotherhood, the circle of trust that they tried to breach their entire careers in Hollywood, never got broken. Notice how Kennedy never worked with Eastwood again. She never worked with Zemeckis or Scorsese again. Think about that. And here it is when Spielberg was dropping the nukes. And honestly, I think Harrison Ford was involved with this. I mean, look, when Spielberg did this, look, when I think about what they did to Mark Hamill, and I mean Kennedy and her flying monkeys, and you bet your sweet Bippy Harrison knew. Harrison's like, this is for Mark and myself, twice for myself, because I think he realized what they did to Han Solo and how they wrote the character out was unbelievable bullshit. I think fans have told him that. I think his own kids have told him that. And he realized, oh my God. Okay? I think that's what happened. I think that Spielberg talked to George. I think he talked to Harrison. And he walked in there loaded for a nuclear firebombing. And look, this was not just a canceling. This was a social hit. To have the biggest director in Hollywood, your so-called friend, assassinate your leadership, your competence, your abilities in public like that because he ignored you completely and your husband, who, by the way, abilities and competence were also questioned and put on the executioner's block at the same time, is a BFD. And the reason why it's a BFD is because everybody in LA was watching, just like everybody in the global film industry saw what happened at Cannes, which this picture was taken. I am just astounded at the humiliations that she's taken. Now, I know that she was offered a way out. Take your celebration, take your accolades, and leave. And I am pretty sure that when she walked out at Star Wars Celebration, she had Frank's blessing to do what she did. Look, I wouldn't doubt they got the money to film some of the sizzle reel for The Acolyte from Frank. And look, again, she wanted this so much, both Iger and Chapek said no. Now she's got a lawsuit, and she's got the board of directors telling Iger to do something about it. Okay, look, Disney just lost LaTondra Newton. I'll talk about that in another video. Shit's changing at Disney, and I think for the better. But if you think Bob Iger didn't know what Spielberg was going to do, you're wrong.
She never had an agent. It's not like she worships the devil.
Well, she doesn't have to. He worships her.
Is it danger? Should I have your ship standing by?
Evacuate? In our moment of triumph? I think you overestimate their chances.
The fleet has moved out to flight speed and we're preparing to...
You have failed me for the last time, Admiral. Apology accepted, Captain Nita.
Oh, she's horrible. I've made a ghastly, ghastly mistake.
And I honestly think that her resentments came out in TFA. I've always thought that she had a hard-on hatred or resentment towards Harrison Ford because maybe something personal back in the day. She met Frank Marshall on the set of Raiders of the Lost Ark, but that doesn't mean that she wasn't, gunning for bigger prey. I don't know. But I think she resents him. I think Marshall resents the fact that he was never really brought into the brotherhood between Lucas and Steven and Harrison. There's a circle of trust. And I think, at least for Spielberg, he didn't trust these two. And it was probably his instincts telling him not to. And I think that was the correct assessment. You just know when someone isn't going to be who they say they are. They're there for their own ambitions, not for the good of the movie, not for the good of their fellow producers and the cast and crew. And Kathleen Kennedy is an ambitious woman with no capability to back it up. Frank Marshall is an ambitious guy with mediocre capabilities. And because she's his wife, he's going to back her up. So think about Star Wars Celebration. He probably encouraged her not to follow Iger's orders because they think they matter. And what they didn't realize was Iger was marshaling people that were far higher in the rungs of Hollywood society than they are. Harrison Ford, Steven Spielberg, and Iger himself. I mean, look, the article in Esquire, the interview in Esquire with Harrison Ford, the kid that wrote it is gushing over Harrison, gushing. And he says when they walked into the place to have breakfast, they ran into Bob Iger. And then he said, it's that kind of place. All right. Bob Iger, despite being Mr. Mediocrity himself as far as a creative out-of-the-box entrepreneur, is a well-respected member of that rung on the ladder in Hollywood. I mean, he's an idiot, and I like to say he's an asshole, but he's our asshole. So, and, look, there's an episode in Sex and the City where Samantha runs afoul of a woman in a higher New York society hive, and the woman puts a social hit out on Sam. this is worse. All right, this is worse. And let me tell you, the people in the office know it. They've been talking about it. Kennedy doesn't have any sympathy anymore from the flying monkeys. She is on her own with this, okay? And she brought this on herself. She really, really did. And look, as far as the flying monkeys are concerned, it's all doom and gloom now, and it's over soon. Okay, this is going to be over soon. Disney completed its audit. Now there's an outside firm coming in to do an audit too, and that's usually a sign of the company being sold. And they're probably going to find funny business in Lucasfilm's books. Okay, and if that's the case, Kennedy not only was humiliated in front of the global film industry at Cannes, but Hollywood at the premiere of Indy 5, she also could be in more serious trouble due to fraud. And of course, Lucasfilm has a lawsuit, okay, over the Acolyte. And when I say fraud, I mean the Acolyte. Okay, the flying monkeys see the end coming. Now, have any of them left yet? No. I don't know why they wouldn't leave. I would be running for the door, waving my resume saying, please hire me, anybody. I don't want to be here anymore. But this is the situation that Kennedy's been left in at Lucasfilm because of her incompetence, and now dragged her husband into it. And this is all caused by her resentment, his resentment, and the fact that they didn't just shit on George Lucas. They shit on Steven Spielberg and Harrison Ford twice. And they shit on Bob Iger too. And that is it. Okay, these guys will not tolerate that. And they don't have to. Okay, so I suggest you go and read Cameron's blog about this, because there's more to it. And I'm going to do a whole video on other things about what Sparrow stated. But I want to thank Cameron for the shout out that he gave me twice this week, and also to Sparrow. You have been a font of information, and thank you for all the stuff you've done for us. And guys, we're at the end of this. It's going to happen soon. This is Steph signing out. I'll see you around the galaxy.